What's up, everybody? Yeah, these two faces are back again. Laurie Horesh, Phil Murphy with the NFL Brekkie Show draft preview. Laz, this is the sport with no off season. You and I have been chatting offline. We use corporate terms. We've spearheaded, put a pin in it, circled back. Been chatting all off season about this league, the sport, and now here we are, the draft. We can count the days to it, and it's still at time of taping. Every team owns their own first-round pick. We have never gotten this close to a draft with every team owning their first-round pick since the Texans were introduced 2002, the expansion of the league, yada, yada, yada. So given this is a draft, and we'll talk about this in other shows, where the kind of trajectory of talent front-loaded in the first round and then it kind of levels out, we wanted to look at teams with multiple picks, days 1 and 2, and kind of give the silver lining. If you're keen on a certain prospect, and for whatever reason, your team goes in a different direction, you can maybe fill that positional need later on with similar talent. We're going to play a little this or that, Mr. Horesh.
We are. A little either or, a little would you rather, a little this or that, whichever way you want to put it out there. But this is this time of year where we've all looked at 1,000 mock drafts, many of them done by our, very own ESPN draft experts over in the States, headlined, of course, by Mel Kiper. But you see the work that guys like Jordan Reed are doing, Field Yates, Matt Miller. We have a stable of immensely deep and well-researched and analyzed draft content. But we've looked at all the permutations. What happens if my team does this? What happens if my team does this? Where does the draft flow? Because it is so, like you said, we're struggling to get to 5 blue chippers. I think there's 5 true blue chippers in this draft, and then it flattens out plenty. Day 2 looks really chock full. I think it's a bit of a meat and potatoes draft. I think we're being forced to eat forget about dessert, do not snack before dinner. How we got to food already. We are 5 minutes into our first show of the post-free agency world, but here we are. Well, it's a Brekkie Show, that's why. But yeah, this isn't, oh yeah, you know what, I'd really like a roll-up for breakfast here. No, this is a proper substantial breakfast. You can have some eggs, you can have some bread, muesli, a healthy granola, some full-fat Greek yogurt, something hearty, some proper food here. And that is, I think, defensive line, absolutely there is talent there, both in the interior, at pass rushing defensive tackles, and the big bodies, the two-gappers, the big nose tackles out there that are plugging up runs and hurting the run game, taking on 2 gaps in the middle of there and making it muddy for offenses to get going. Definitely talent on the edge. Linebacker, perhaps a little less so. There's some intriguing quarterback talent, but yeah, I think some talent up front on defense. And then offensive line, the interior offensive line, not a bad guard class. There's certainly some intriguing tackle prospects as well. Tackle guard tackle. We'll get into a little bit of that. But yeah, for me, it's a little bit more of a meat and potatoes draft. And I think when we talk meat and potatoes, talking about the running back position as well. There are this thing goes deep. Everyone knows the name Ashton Jeanty. Those who perhaps
everybody
their teams
knows
are
the
picking
name
Ashton. That's actually how his friends refer to him. Ashton Jeanty, everyone knows. I think those who perhaps their teams reside at pick 12 or perhaps pick 20 are getting a little familiar with the name of Marion Hampton as well. The running back class runs well into day 3, though. This is going to be there's going to be backs that have good quality starting level production. Picks. It wouldn't surprise me if it was in round 5, maybe even later. I think round 4, there's going to be some fantastic options available as you sit there at the start of day 3. So yeah, I think as we look at this draft, I'm going to say it one more time. It's a substance draft. It's meat and potatoes. It's not all flash. The wide receiver class leaves a little to be desired. There are some interesting tight ends for sure, but this is, and quarterback, if we're talking flash, we're talking splash, we're talking big names, that quarterback spot, I've heard it described, and I think it's a pretty apt way. This is closer to the perhaps Kenny Pickett draft than perhaps last year's draft. There's not an we certainly have a firm favorite at number 1 with the Tennessee Titans and Cam Ward, but after that, it is murky as anything. Do another 2 quarterbacks go in the next 4 picks? Do no quarterbacks go in the next 18 picks? It's very much up in the air. So with that, it's a nice time to look at how this thing plays out. A couple of your teams out there, we opt this way. What does it look like on day 2? Or let's take this approach on day 1, and how does that open up the board for us?
Yeah, so Laz, I'll start. And I think a good team to start with to kind of crystallize what we're doing here is the Green Bay Packers. Brian Gutekunst has been with the Packers since 1999. We know his modus operandi, and it's not to take a skill position wide receiver in the first round. This team was in the middle of the road in terms of cap space. They did darn near nothing in free agency. One of the more dormant free agent moves. So the needs they had coming out of 2024, receiver, corner, interior defensive line, maybe a secondary need more at the edge rusher offensive tackle position, are where we are right now. Yeah, they added Mecole Hardman. I don't think that scratches the itch for the franchise quarterback under center there. So as I'm looking at the Packers, you could say, if I'm a Packers supporter, man, hopefully this is the year we go wide receiver at 23. The concern is that if you have at the top, and you have McMillan and Matthew Golden after him, is 23 the right spot to go with an Emeka Egbuka or Luther Burden? If you're talking to Matt Miller, he loves Luther Burden because of the eval from Burden in 2024. Burden was not the same caliber of player. Excuse me, 2023. Burden was not the same caliber of player in 2024. So for the Packers, what I think is a good combination is to address one of those defensive needs in the first round. Either go with a Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky, or maybe a Derek Harmon defensive tackle out of Oregon, players of that ilk. So that's how you slot in that 23 pick. And then Packers also hold 54-87. So if you go defense first, now at 54, you're probably in that run of receivers. Your Jack Bech, your Isaiah Bond, your Jaden Noel, your Jalen Higgins out of Iowa State, the two Iowa State receivers. Noel's out of Iowa State as well. Or maybe if you go Hairston at corner, you could take a Darius Alexander, the defensive tackle out of Toledo, or Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, go CB, D tackle, and then go wide receiver in the third round. So for the Packers, that's my this or that. It's addressing two of those three needs in those first two rounds. I think Gutekunst, just given what we know, how he builds his team, going to go with defensive player, best corner / interior defensive lineman on the board at the end of round one. And then in that thick run of receivers that we're going to see go from 45 to about 60, take his wide receiver there, help his QB, Jordan Love.
Yeah, for me, the top two wide receivers on the board, I think there's a top two. If you look at Travis Hunter as a receiver, it's mixed bag from the NFL. It seems like perhaps more look at him as a cornerback. But if he were being evaluated as a wide receiver purely, I think you see him in that top echelon there as a blue chipper, and I don't think he's anywhere close to where the Packers are picking, typically in the 20s as usual. They thought they found their nice little nook there at 23 this year. Is that right? That seems very Packersy to be picking in those early.
For the hosts of the draft, it must be said. Titletown, rolling out the green and gold carpet for the NFL world for the draft.
So you're not getting him there. I'd be stunned if Tet McMillan, T-Mac makes his way there. I think there's a bit of galaxy braining going on. I think we might be over-evaluating him and nitpicking him a little too much. I don't think he's not a Jamar Chase prospect. He's not at that tier. But what he does well, and you're hearing, a few years ago, a quote that's a little dated and a little old now, that he doesn't love tape study and how that has changed. You've also heard that he's a very good teammate. And I don't think a lot of people coming off their interviews, or at least his media access, are coming away thinking this is someone who has any sort of football character concerns. On that note, though, you do hear some interesting reporting around someone like a Luther Burden, who does flash that explosive creativity after the catch, and has speed. I think his time speed could have been even fast with what you see out there on field. Certainly used in a versatile way, perhaps not as traditional as some people would like to see the route tree at college. But when you're hearing that perhaps he's not the first guy at the front of the line to get his practice reps in, and he's not hyper, he's not that alpha rah-rah, hyper motivated, outwardly at least, character in the practice scene. If that's coming off, that is going to give people a little bit of concern. And then you hear about people comparisons matter. This gets thrown around, particularly when you have kind of top level GMs or even ownership hearing about what a player is. Quite often they like to hear about, who does he remind me of? And when you start to hear, you see the flash and you see the skill set and what he can do with the ball in his hands. And then you hear about questions about the, committed football character or how intensely motivated he is at all times. People do start to throw around words like Kadarius Toney, which is not something you want to be tagged with at this time of year, considering the way Toney's career has gone. So I don't know that wide receiver is a natural fit at 23. If you're not getting those two there, you've got the Golden Hive out there. You've got players like you have Higgins out of Iowa State, who has a lot of fans. Some people trying to push up into that back end of the round one. Not for me. So I like what you've done there. I'd lean towards the strength of that I think there's a rare amount of defensive tackle prospects in this class. I think going and attacking someone like that in the back end of round one, getting the type of interior presence that, one, that team could use, and two, isn't usually on the shelves there when you're picking late in the first round. I like that. And then looking maybe the guy that you like in that stack of day two-ish wide receiver prospects. For me, I'm a Royals guy. You can make a joke about my upbringing now, Phil, if you really want to. But I'm a Royals guy. I like Jalen Royals, and what he presents and brings to the table could be especially a little bit of a different look to what we've seen from one of those Packers wide receivers like what you put together there.
Laz, do you have a this or that?
I do. I have several. And I could have transitioned a little smoothly into that myself. But let's go. I'm going with the Patriots off the top here. Close to the top of the board, Patriots picking at 4 and 38. And I want to look at...
And they have two early
Phil, pitching to you.
3 picks. They go 69-77 as well.
They do. They're stacked there. But I'm just looking at those top 2 picks there. I'm looking at who the coach is with Vrabel returning to town, looking what his MO has been. We know that offensive line has been absolutely deplorable, and we know that running back room and that running game was less than exciting over the past couple of years, where Ramondre Stevenson has not elevated his game to the level that the Ramondre Stevenson fan base believe he would. And remember a couple of years ago, the Ezekiel Elliott experiment was nothing more than 3 yards and a cloud of dust. So I'm looking at the run game, and I'm presenting 2 scenarios here, Phil. You tell me which one you're vibing more. At the 4 pick, we're operating in a world where Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are off the board. Okay, so we've seen Cam Ward go 1, and then 2 and 3 has seen Carter and Hunter off the board, which I know is a real, not a fake pen throw. That's a real pen throw situation for the Patriots scouting room, their war room there. They're going to be very, very upset that neither of those bona fide blue chippers are there. So you can go 2 ways, all right? We're rebuilding the running back room, and we're improving our offensive line. So here are my scenarios. You go Will Campbell, who most of the league, the buzz you're hearing is most of the league is not concerned with his 33 and change inch arms and that he will project perfectly at tackle. But hey, look, it's not like there's only one spot the Patriots could use help on the offensive line, right, interior or exterior. You go Will Campbell, and then we're going to come back in the early 30s there, or in the mid 30s there, late 30s, 38. We're going to take Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa. Perhaps not the flashiest running back out there, but an absolute downhill thumper with 3-down skill set and plenty to like for what he puts on the table. Or let's flip that and let's go, you know what we've seen last year was the return of the running back. We made running back sexy again last year. We saw what happened in free agency. Now we're going to turn to the next elite talent to end here. Let's take Ashton Genty off the board out of Boise State at the 4 slot. And 38, I'm going to give them someone like we're talking, Will Campbell might have reluctant inside-outside versatility. He believes, I'm sure, that he's a tackle through and through. This is someone who has perhaps more established guard tackle flexibility here. Let's go get someone out of Ohio State, someone like a Donovan Jackson there at 38. So you come away with Genty. Again, blue chipper, we're throwing positional value out the window. We saw what just happened in the Super Bowl. We saw what happened in the postseason and the 2024 campaign as a whole. We're going to lean into making that running back position truly explosive, electric, and exciting again in New England. And to back that up and to, solidify the pocket a bit for Drake May, let's come back and get Donovan Jackson at 38. What do you like there more for the Patriots? Which one am I selling you more on there? Are we going the flash early, or are we going meat and potatoes early and coming back to we're coming back to the skill position in the 30s?
Well, there's 2 reasons I'm going with the former. One is that a great running game is reliant on a decent offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
A decent offensive line is reliant on nothing. If you have a strong a strong offensive line is reliant on nothing. If you have a strong O-line, you can cover far more issues than all the flash in the world if you have a saloon door O-line. I think offensive line for the Patriots is enough of a priority. Yeah, they went out and got Morgan Moses in free agency. They splashed a ton of cash in free agency, more than anybody. And over the past 8 years, we've seen that lead to a minimum +3 win increase and a median +5 win increase. So you're looking at a team that's already making strides. I also don't think Donovan Jackson's getting past the Chiefs. Kuiper had him 26, 27 in his latest mock.
Yeah.
Knowing the issues Kansas City's had on its O-line, I think that's going to be a chief priority, pun intended. And I could see somebody like Donovan Jackson getting a phone call, not even needing really to change too much of the shade of red from scarlet to whatever the chief shade of red is. Kind of a shade of red in my background here. But I think if it is that doomsday scenario for the Patriots being on the short list of blue chippers, the elite edge rusher, which they could use, the wide receiver corner, which they could use both of those positions for Travis Hunter.
Absolutely.
If neither of those are available. Now, Shedeur Sanders is holding a private workout for the Giants in the coming days. So I don't know what that leads you to believe. But seeing the recent news of Derek Carr, I think Elliott Wolf picks up the phone and calls Mickey Loomis straight away and tries to get a deal worked out with any of the teams that might be looking at Shedeur to let them jump the queue, move up 5 spots, 7 spots, wherever they might be, to go with. I think the Raiders are taking themselves out of that sweepstakes, just the structure of the Geno Smith contract. But now the Saints are in position where they may need a quarterback sooner than later. I don't think Shedeur is getting past them at 9. With him available, if I were the Patriots, I would try and find a way to trade back, add further draft capital. And I don't think Membu's dropping to them, but one of the top O-line guys may be available at 9. And even still, that even though there's so much in free agency, there are needs at so many positions, they shouldn't feel forced into a move. I love the creativity of an Ashton Genty going there, but given what that offensive line is, I think you're going to lose a lot of tread on the tires in the first 2 years. And while he is a terrific running back prospect, I don't know if he's going to be able to carry that team to the next level like fortifying an O-line and prioritizing Drake May's health would be.
Fair enough. I know I should hand straight back to you for your second one here, but you did bring up the Saints, and that actually parlays perfectly into my second one. So I'm holding on to the steering wheel. I'm not actually giving. You can stay in shotgun for just one more second one more example, because I've got the Saints here at 9, and I've got Shedeur Sanders, so it's a perfect opportunity here. Look, I think cornerback and quarterback so glaring. Like, there's a lot of glaring needs when it comes to the New Orleans Saints. My New Orleans Saints friends out there, a surprising amount of them in Australia, but perhaps not when you consider about the glorious Drew Brees and Sean Payton era, but a lot of pained ones still hanging on. They'll tell you that there's needs across the board, and it's not the most talent-rich roster or iteration of the Saints that we've seen. Okay, so the Saints, cornerback and quarterback, these are the permutations I'm working on here. Okay, so the scenario 1, Shedeur Sanders at 9, and you come back with someone like a Trey Amos at 40 and help out that cornerback room that is depleted, would be an accurate statement. Yeah. Or do you go someone like a Jahdae Barron, versatile, but I mean, I think when I hear so many takes on draft prospects over the past couple of months in particular, it's really ramped up. Everybody's got a thought. Jahdae Barron seems to have pretty close to universal appreciation, appeal, and love across the board. Yes, he's a bit undersized. He's not a 5'11", 6'1", 6'2" built cornerback. He doesn't look like Jalen Ramsey out there, but the tape is fantastic. The football character, the versatility, and playing above his build size there. Do you look at someone like Jahdae Barron at night, get yourself a blue chipper, or close to a blue chipper? That, I think he would be one if he did have more of the traditional measurables you like to see for a high-end first-round prospect, and then come back with I normally pride myself on pronunciation. I've heard Tyler Shaw's name said a million different ways. I have no idea if sorry?
Shuck.
There you go. One more time for everyone at home, Phil.
Shuck.
There you go. Tyler Shuck. You come back with someone like him in the early second round. Look, this is an overage prospect who's had. Sorry?
I don't know if he gets past Cleveland.
Well, I'm looking at him. I'm looking at our friend out of the Lane Kiffin offense.
Jalen Milroe.
No, not Jalen Milroe. No, stop talking. No, I'm not having Jalen Milroe conversation this early in our show. No, Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. I looking at those guys as kind of that quarterback, potentially 3-4. We'll see what happens with Shedeur. But Tyler Shuck as your option at 40, overaged. What is he, 26 as a draft prospect? A lot of big injuries, not the kind of repeated soft tissue or ligament injuries. There's been a lot of kind of those hard contact. We've had some breaks in there, that kind of thing that he's been dealing with. But look, plenty of arm talent, aggressive, perhaps not risk averse enough in some points, does like to put that arm to test, perhaps a little when he's a little delayed in his process on getting off some maybe clouded or riskier targets that he has out there, but a lot to like on film. Well put together. You got the prototypical size you want. And yeah, the ability to hit every blade of grass across the field, the arm talent. What do you prefer there? Do you go and get yourself a DB to help out that room that is crying for it, and then go back to the quarterback position and go in that early day 2 range with someone like Tyler Shuck? I'm just continuing to add the emphasis that you did there. Especially, look, it's not dissimilar perhaps from someone like Derek Carr, who was also forced to wait, didn't go early, wasn't an early round 1 draft prospect. Yeah. Or do you like going and getting your man, just committing to the future with someone like Shedeur Sanders at 9 and coming back for a certainly more size in the cornerback in Amos, perhaps less polish and less complete film?
Well, the Saints are screwed. They entered the offseason with the least amount of cap space, and then they just made their whole free agency New Orleans reunions, whether it was Justin Reed, who played high school ball in Louisiana, Will Clapp, who
Honey Badger,
local roots, Brandon Cooks, who had played for the Saints previously.
The Honey Badger's back.
They're deceived into thinking that they can win this division next year. Then they restructure Derek Carr's contract to basically shift their dead money 12 months up the road, only to find out he might not be available this season due to a shoulder issue.
Correct.
And now they're tied to $80 million in dead cap if they part ways with him this year. This team needs to build for the future. To answer your question, it all comes down to what their eval is on Shedeur Sanders. The pluses, tough as hell, attitude, great teammate, all the boxes you want to tick as a leader. Very accurate.
Anticipates.
And it's accurate. Yeah, a lot of screens, but also like he does show accuracy downfield. But the cons are not the strongest arm. There isn't a measurable in terms of athlete or size that jumps out on tape. He takes a bazillion sacks. A lot of that is a byproduct of a terrible offensive line, but also he just held onto the ball in some cases. 74% completion. If he would have blown the ball away with a little more discipline and made a 1st and 10, a 2nd and 10, as opposed to 1st and 10, to 2nd and 18 taking a sack, maybe his completion percentage is in the high 60s, but on the net, it's a better thing for the team. That's something you can coach out of him. But again, the Saints, the face of the franchise ever, is a guy who was limited in his athletic attributes, who was very accurate under center, tough, great leadership, Drew Brees. If you think you have that mold, which Kuiper is giving that level of eval to Shedeur Sanders, you take him 11 times out of 10. If not, you're setting the franchise back further, but I think this franchise is suffering a little bit of self-deception in that, we can win now. So if they're thinking they can win now, they might be in a position where they're going for a guy who can and should contribute right away, but then Shedeur might be thrust into the fire if, in fact, Derek Carr is not ready for week 1, which now, after restructuring his contract, after the combine, after all these draft workouts, they find out that might be the case. So it's a really unenviable situation. If we're ranking franchise plight at the moment, the only team I would put behind the Saints is the Browns. And I mean, it's dark days right now for New Orleans. I don't say that to dodge the question. I think they'll go Shedeur and then address their litany of needs with later round picks. But I would be surprised if this team finished anywhere other than last place in the NFC South.
Just a lovely little hammer to throw in there. Okay, while you're hot, let's go back to your second one here. I just had 2 in a row. I've turned this into a snake segment.
Yeah. It actually works. I'll switch up my order because my second team is the Chargers, and the needs aren't completely dissimilar, at least as far as prioritized needs for Jim Harbaugh in his second season. The Chargers entered with a ton of cap space. They got Mekhi Becton, which addresses an offensive line need. They got Najee Harris, which is essentially a 1-year rental. You go down, I mean, addressed corner a little bit, but I still think they need corner. I'll go in order. They need pass catcher, big neon light pass catcher, receiver, tight end, but they could also use some interior defensive line help. Wouldn't stun me if they went edge rusher. I know Jim Harbaugh obviously marches to the beat of his own drum. If Omarion Hampton's on the board, it wouldn't surprise me if they took him at 22. But as I'm projecting what this draft is going to look like, I think one of those, that kind of top tier of pass catchers is going to be left for them. If Ted McMillan gets past Sean Payton and the Broncos, there's a lot of measurable similarities. Ted McMillan to Marcus Colston, how Colston was used in a Sean Payton offense of yesteryear. But if one of those top tier receivers is available, the Chargers will take it. If somehow one of, not Tyler Warren, I don't think, but if Colston gets past the Colts at 14, I could see him falling and being available to the Chargers at 22. But then it's a similar conversation as we had with the Packers, which is why I switched this order. Do you go a Maxwell Hairston at corner? Do you go with a Derek Harmon out of Oregon in that 22 slot? Maybe a little high for him, and then at 55, it's a very similar need. Do you then go wide receiver? But the Colts, I mean, their needs are so glaring at the receiver position. I know they bring Mike Williams over, but this is a team that could go a Loveland and then a Jack Best to pair with Ladd McConkey. Fun nicknames there, I'm sure. Akin to the Eagles secondary. You go with a Jalen Noel or Jaden Higgins. I know Isaiah Bond has some serious off-field issues he's addressing at the moment. Will that make him available at 55 to Jim Harbaugh? So it's a very similar conversation. Chargers to Packers. And Laz, I'll just continue on, and then you can break down all of my list. I'm going with the Jets. They're a fascinating case at 7. A team that we know has the longest playoff drought active in the NFL. A completely new regime there, so it's hard to tell what they might do. They address needs to a degree. Well, they address needs at quarterback, Justin Fields, bringing him in. They address needs to a degree at safety and interior defensive line. I think they go tackle or tight end here. If Armand Membu's there, he's gone. If the Patriot scenario comes, they call the thing, they jump up and take Shador at 4. Patriots go back to 9. Maybe a Will Campbell here for the Jets would be a good fit as a potential pillar left tackle. I think it's going to be Membu or Warren then, most realistically for the Jets. And then you just flip the script. That's at 7. You flip the script at 42. So if you go Warren, you're looking at one of those, Ariante Arcelor type tackles, those early day 2 guys who may even sneak to the back end of the first round. But one of them will be available toward the top of day 2. Or you go Membu, and then you're dropping down to like an Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. Or a receiver at 42. Luther Burden slips out of the first round, and you've tackled tackle, and then you go receiver. So I think it's going to be guys who may line up adjacent to each other: tackle offensive, or tackle tight end, or tackle receiver, tight end tackle. One of those type things for the Gotham Green.
It's 42, so it might be a little bit of a slide, but could someone like a Mason Taylor make it to them
100%.
At like a 42?
He was the other one I was thinking. 6'5", 250. First ever in LSU history to be 100 yards, 1,000 receiving yards. 100% he could be there.
And you know what scouts love?
Boom.
Bloodlines.
Yeah.
They love some pedigree. Pedigree.
Played in the AFC East for a long time.
He certainly did. So I think that's an interesting. I'd lean towards them going staunch, going stout early, and then coming back. I think it matches up. Warren is another guy up there who's pressing, into that kind of top 10 talent in the class. I don't know that there's a natural receiver fit there unless something crazy happens. No. Travis Hunter slides, which I don't think is happening to that spot.
But
and they decide
at 7, if Shador's available, teams might be calling the Jets willing to pop back a couple slots.
Absolutely, and I think that opens it up for them. But yeah, I think you look at one of those the offensive tackles you talked about there, Campbell, Membu, make a ton of sense. And then you come back with, I think you could be in a happy spot with. Do you get someone like a Mason Taylor to slide to you as a tight end? Do you look, because they do have their wide receiver 1, so it's not like they need to go out and get we need a dominant guy. And there's definitely more wide receiver 2, 3 archetypes in this draft than your classic blue chip 15 target a game, line them up as the first read on every snap kind of prospect. So I lean towards that, and I would like to see considering the quarterback as well, Justin Fields, I wouldn't mind seeing that short to intermediate safety blanket, big target prospect there for him, considering some of the most positive notes that someone like Fields had during his time with the Chicago Bears was the connection with someone like Cole Kmet. That was one of the more positive things. Ask those that drafted Cole Kmet in fantasy.
And Laz, they bring over, it's a great point you make there. They bring over Tanner Engstrand, the passing game coordinator from the Lions, who worked his way up the Lions system. We know the creativity that we saw from Ben Johnson as the OC there with the Lions, how they shifted things around. Tyler Warren can line up anywhere.
Yeah.
X, H, Y, Z, slot, any backfield. He lined up as a freaking center against USC, but the formation made him eligible as a receiver. He snapped it back to the backup QB, who threw it to the starting QB. He ran a post route and caught a contested touchdown. The guy can line up anywhere. So if you have an offensive mind in the Ben Johnson tree, I guess we can call it that, as Tanner Engstrand is, that offensive coordinator getting his debut, you want somebody who's versatile like that. You can get really creative, and it's just something for the defense to be aware of. I don't know if he's going to wear 44, but where's 44 for the Jets every time he breaks the huddle?
Like you said, he lines up absolutely everywhere. H, X, Y, Z, LMNOP, which I'm not sure if you've heard, but they're trying to get rid of LMNO in how they teach the alphabet. They've changed the cadence of the ABC song. I know you and me differ on Z versus Z because of the 16,000 kilometers that separate us and how we were brought up, although you were all over the world. So that number changed depending where you were.
I mean, it's how you dismount. We can agree on the first 25. I'm fine.
Yeah, we can. But the fact that LMNO is getting phased out in some parts of the educational world is
LBU.
It's just, look, So just, it's LMNO, it always will be. And that's our Tyler Warren breakdown. They're probably the only one that brought up primary education. Now, moving on to my last one here. And we're going to go to the Falcons. We're going to the middle of that first round. The first two picks are 15 and 46. And this is a sizzle or steak.
And then one pick over the next 4 rounds.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a sizzle or steak, either or, that I've got for you here, Phil. The sizzle side at 15, if he's there, which, there's where the edge rushers come off in what order is up for debate. Let's go Mike Green out of Marshall. Plenty of explosiveness, fun traits. I think he's willing against the run as well as being a bendy, explosive pass rusher. So I think he's Mike Green's an interest. Now there is some character stuff that's being looked at, and you do see that pop up in different scouting profiles. But from a talent standpoint, he's certainly in that range. They need pass rush help. This is
for the last.
There are these teams that we've
pass rush help.
The Jets and their offensive line. There's just units that always need help.
The Falcons and their pass rush. The Dolphins' offensive line. It's the
especially with this is not an Atlanta Falcons team that has Grady Jarrett on the roster anymore, at least providing some interior pass rush. So this is the sizzle side of things. We've got Mike Green and then Siobhan Revell, cornerback, Easton.
ECU.
There you go.
I forgot to mention him in my Packers potential 54 pick. So you're right there.
Absolutely. Who has some injury questions and is making his way back. But
Laz, he's a defensive back from a directional school, that is your flavor of the week.
Right here. We're right here, and we're not going anywhere. I think this goes back to my crush on Jimmy Ward coming out of Northern Illinois, I want to say. A little NIU love on a midday. Sorry?
It checks out.
There we go. Yeah, it's been like this for. I mean, look, I went mainstream when I was in on Byron Jones around the corner from you at UConn. So that was mainstream for me. So yeah, a little ECU love here for Siobhan Revell, who, from a tape standpoint, outside of Travis Hunter, is like up there with some people's like cornerback 1. Obviously, health and the school pedigree, isn't it? Some of the other classes, but
it worked out okay for Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. So
exactly, so that's the sizzle option, right? We've gone pass rush and pass defense, high position value, highly paid, premium premium slots there and areas that this team absolutely needs. Or let's go beef up front. And that is we're going with, so that's my 15 and 46 option, Mike Green, Siobhan Revell.
Yep.
Or here's the stake. Gray Zabel, center, North Dakota State University, clearly center number 1 on everybody's board.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty unanimous. It's not a great center class. Last year was a fantastic center class with both high-end talent and depth. And then coming back with someone like a Tyleik Williams, where you are just getting power, unstoppable momentum when he gets going and gets some penetration, but gapping, part of this stout defensive tackle class, more on the one technique side of things, which is that big body run stuff up more than the 3 technique, which is that upfield pass rushing specialist that you see. Aaron Donald would be the most recent obvious name for that, but he's kind of an alien, so don't like to use him as the most blatant one there. But yeah, so you're looking at Zabel and Tyleik Williams, and that is, again, areas that they need help with. They've had changeover on the interior of that offensive line. You get Zabel coming in, more help as we enter a new quarterback era there in the Atlanta Falcons with Kirk Cousins lingering. That song Linger just getting a run, the cover getting a run on far too many reels and TikToks in my world right now. But you've got, we've moved on at the quarterback spot, and we want to make sure we're stout up front. And then coming back with, again, no, it's not the pass rushing upside that someone like a Mike Green has at 15. We're going interior line. We're making that thing a little stronger there and beefing up an area of concern. So when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons, where they're at, they have been a sizzle team, right? Skill positions, back up soon, and then taking over starting quarterbacks. But skill position, left-handed quarterback. Do they stay on the sizzle side of things, or do we see some stake in this draft and they go 2 big bodies at the center of the offensive defensive line? What do you like there?
Well, I mean, a team with 7 straight losing seasons and no playoffs since 2017, I think it's time you mix things up. And so I would say that the first of those 2 options is superior, Mike Green. Whether it's Green or a Shamar Stewart, a guy with all the measurables in the world, but like next to no production.
Duffy away.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's like, because with the Falcons, you got to hit. Because if you go edge corner, which you had advised, I think that's a perfectly great way for them to attack this. I mean, you may get one of the centers as best available at 118. Kind of that second tier of like a Clay Webb from Jacksonville State or Drew Kendall from Boston College. If we're talking day 3 guys. The one disappointing thing for the Falcons is just the structure of the class at large. It's unlikely there's going to be some prospect who's sliding down the board. Maybe a couple weeks ago we would have thought, Shedeur Sanders might be sliding down and the Rams and Steelers would be bidding to jump up and give up some draft capital to get the Falcons some more picks. I don't think that's likely here. I think they're going to be in a position where nobody's really going to be keen to move up 5-10 spots to grab somebody because the positions that they need and the positions that are available, they're likely going to be multiple options. James Pierce is probably going to be there, if not Shamar Stewart, if not Mike Green, which if you need an edge rusher, it's great to have options. But if you're a team with next to no draft capital and you need some, you're kind of stuffed. So I think there you go, all right, best available kind of lines up with our need. Whoever they love, if they love Donovan Ezeraku there and they said, all right, you're susceptible against the run, but you're a hell of a productive pass rusher. Come on down from Chestnut Hill to Atlanta. Good on you. And I think that's the route they go.
Well, Phil, that's 3 for you and 3 for me. The either or, have to pick one.
Left. Who you got next?
This or that. Yeah, we've done 30 each. We're going to cover 150 prospects today. But this is just part 1. This is just part 1 of our draft, NFL Draft 2025 preview week content. We have, this was either or. This was this or that. This was would you rather. This was you have to pick one. I mean, can you tell that content is cyclical and has gone and round from content discussion has gone from what was on the playground at recess when you were in primary school to being the title of massive, like a massive network content in this year, 2025. But we've got one more coming up, Phil. So you ready to throw a few little bit of home cooking in part 2 of our draft week content series?
Without question. But for now, we say a short farewell for all of our NFL draft coverage. Keep it on espn.com.au/NFL. And every Thursday, we got a fresh episode of NFL Blitz.